And welcome to video 33, and today we're going to start up sine, tan and cosine. Now, to be honest, sine, tan and cosine, it's a little bit of a trouble topic, and it will take me about 3 to 4 videos to go through sine, tan and cosine and to ensure that you understand it perfectly, well, to understand it inside out. Now, the first step in understanding sine, tan and cosine is to know when you can use it. Sine, tan and cosine, you can only use it for right angle triangles. And when you're using this sine, tan and cosine, and the other step, you need to know how to identify which side is your hypotenuse, which side is your opposite, and which side is your adjacent. A triangle has a right angle triangle has 3 sides, and when you're doing this topic, you will need to identify these 3 sides. Now, I'm going to show you how to identify these 3 sides. Let's go to question 1. Here we have a triangle A, B, and C. And over here, we see we have a 40 degrees, and here we have our right angle. Whenever you're doing this topic, you want to pretend that you're standing up in the angle. Now, which angle? Are we going to stand up in the 90 degrees, or are we going to stand up in the 40 degrees? Just to let you know, we are never allowed to stand up in the 90 degrees. So, we're going to stand by the 40 degrees. Now, what do I mean by stand by the 40 degrees? I want you to pretend that this is a house. Well, a very weird shaped house. And you are going to stand up in this corner where the 40 degrees is. Now, when you stand up by the 40 degrees, one side is going to be your opposite. One side is going to be your hypotenuse, one side is going to be your opposite, and one side is going to be your adjacent. Today, you're going to realize opposite and adjacent can change in the same question, and it all depends on where you are standing. Now, in identifying the 3 sides, I always like to identify my hypotenuse first, because the hypotenuse is always the easiest to identify. Wherever I see a hypotenuse, I'm going to put the letter H. Whenever I figure out which side is my opposite, I'm going to put an O, and whichever side is my adjacent, I'm going to put the letter A. Just in case you don't know what adjacent means next to. So, when I'm identifying my hypotenuse, remember from my previous 2 videos, the hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. So, I'm going to identify my hypotenuse first. Here's my right angle, so the side opposite is my hypotenuse. So, this side is my hypotenuse. Now for the opposite. Now, if I'm standing here, I already identified the hypotenuse. That means there are 2 sides remaining. One of these 2 sides has to be the opposite, and one of the 2 sides has to be the adjacent. The opposite is always the second easiest to pinpoint. If I'm standing here, this side is my opposite side. Isn't this wall opposite to you? And once we figure out who is the hypotenuse and who is the opposite, the remaining side of the triangle is going to be labeled your adjacent. Now, for the time being, you're just labeling opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. You may not be too sure why you are learning this, but in my next video, when it's time to actually apply the formulas with sine, tan, and cosine, you're going to realize how important it is to pinpoint who's opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So, if we're standing here, here's my opposite, and here's my adjacent, and here's my hypotenuse. But let's just say the question changed, and we are no longer standing here. Let's just say that for some reason, we no longer stand here, and we are required to stand here. Let's just say. Now, you're going to realize your opposite and adjacent is going to change. Because let's identify the hypotenuse first. You notice here's my right angle. The hypotenuse is always opposite my right angle. So here's still my opposite. Here's still my hypotenuse. So it doesn't matter if I stand here or here. My hypotenuse will always be opposite my right angle. In other words, the hypotenuse doesn't care where you are standing. The hypotenuse is determined by the right angle and the side opposite the right angle. So, if I'm standing here now, isn't this side the opposite side? Isn't this side or wall opposite to you? So here will no longer be the adjacent. Here will be the opposite. And once you figure out who is the hypotenuse and who is the opposite, the remaining side is your adjacent. So you see how standing, where you are standing in a triangle can determine who's opposite and adjacent. And keep in mind, the hypotenuse will never ever change. So let's do another question. If we are given this triangle P, Q, and R, and we are standing by the 72 degrees. Let's assume this angle is 72 degrees, and for some reason, I ask you to stand here. Let's identify which side first, your hypotenuse. Your hypotenuse doesn't care where you are standing. To determine the hypotenuse, look for the right angle, and then look for the side opposite that. So here's your hypotenuse. After you figure out who is your hypotenuse, try to pinpoint the opposite side. It's always the second easiest to find. So if I'm standing here, I have two sides to choose from, this one or this one. Isn't this side looking like the opposite to you? Isn't this wall opposite to where you are standing? So here's your opposite. And once you figure out who is your hypotenuse and opposite, the remaining side is automatically your adjacent. So once again, let's pretend that we are standing here for some reason. And let's see what happens. If we are standing here now, right, your hypotenuse is still opposite the right angle. So your hypotenuse is not going to change even though you're standing somewhere different in the triangle. But if you're standing here, this side or this face of the triangle will be opposite to you. So here will be regarded as the opposite. We have the hypotenuse and the opposite. The third or remaining side will be your adjacent. Right? Let's do third example. Let's say I give you this triangle. You notice I give you the length of two triangles. And I want you to tell me which two sides were given. I want to know if these two sides are opposite and adjacent, adjacent and hypotenuse. I want to know what they are depending on where we are standing, which means I need to tell you where to stand in this triangle. We are going to pretend we are standing by angle M. If we are standing here, let's identify our hypotenuse. Our hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. It doesn't care where we are standing in the triangle. So this 40 meters is opposite the right angle. So this 40 meters is my hypotenuse. If I am standing here now, the next person to find it is the opposite. Isn't this side the opposite to where I am standing? So here's my opposite. So once I have my hypotenuse and opposite, the third or remaining side is my adjacent. Now, the question I was asking is what two sides were we given? We were given the length of the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side because we are assuming we are standing at M. So in this question, we have the length of the hypotenuse and we have the length of the adjacent. In question 4, I want you to pretend we are standing at angle Y. And once again, I want you to tell me what two sides were we given the length of. If I'm standing here, even though I'm standing here, I should try to find the hypotenuse first because that's the easiest thing to figure out. Isn't here my right angle? Well, the side opposite my right angle is my hypotenuse. So if I'm standing here, I have two more sides. One of them has to be opposite and one of them has to be adjacent. Isn't this side opposite to where I'm standing right now? Making here the opposite. So if once I figure out H and O, the remaining side is the adjacent. So back to my question now. What two sides do I have the length of? It seems to me I have the length of the opposite side, which is 16 meters, and I have the length of the adjacent side. I do not have the length of the hypotenuse. So in this question, I was given opposite and adjacent. So I hope this video was helpful in helping you identify in a right angle triangle only who is the hypotenuse, who is the opposite, and who is the adjacent. In my next video, this is going to be critical. You are going to be required to just watch the triangle and in your mind try to visualize who is opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. And don't worry too much of knowing where to stand in the triangle. I will give you a pretty good idea of how to figure out where to stand in a triangle in my next video. So once again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you need more information on these videos and worksheets to go along with these videos, you can check the website below. So and also don't forget to subscribe and share the link. Have a good day.
Oh my God.